Makes sense that Allah could have preserved those words. But the fact that he didn't can only signify one thing. It wasn't meant for you.
Oh, hang on. He chose certain things to be omitted from the record and other things to be preserved. The ones that were in the record, I think they are intended for me.
Okay.
The ones that were forgotten.
So how do you differentiate when there are contradictory statements? Which one do you then take?
Can you give an example?
Okay, so if you look at, for example, Paul, and if you look at the description of Paul that Paul makes when he sees the vision of Jesus. So he says, if you look at Acts 22:9, okay, the men traveling with him stood speechless, hearing the voice but seeing no one.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at in Acts 9:7,
Can you give me again the
Acts 22:9.
Acts 22:9. Let me just read it in Greek so that I understand.
I've got the Greek here as well, but I can't read Greek, so you might be.
22:9. I have it here.
The men traveling with him stood speechless, hearing the voice, but seeing no one.
Okay.
Wait.
It's not a
They
contradiction.
beheld the light.
Yeah.
22 verse 9. They beheld the light.
And those who were with me saw the light, but did not hear the voice of the one speaking to me. Okay?
However, the voice.
And then in Acts 9:7 it says, the companions hear the voice, but in Acts 22:9 it explicitly says that they did not hear the voice.
No,
Okay.
that's what I
So
read.
there are direct contradictions
Your
in even.
contradiction is about the word hearing, right? Is that what you're saying?
What-
Three different descriptions given.
Yeah.
So
Three different descriptions of the same event by
Ikusan
the same
did not
person.
hear. So that's right. So in Acts 22, let me just make a mental note. In Acts 22 verse 9 is that they saw the light and they did not hear, they did not ikusan, the one speaking. The one speaking, okay. Now let me go to Acts chapter 9, was it? Verse what?
In Acts 9:7,
Acts 9:7.
the companions hear the voice, but in Acts 22:9,
No, but they are akuntes.
yeah, they
It's
hear.
a different hearing.
They hear.
Right? There is
Yeah.
a different two different words for hearing.
I understand.
One is for hearing and one is for understanding.
Yeah, but so
right?
they hear. So they
they
hear.
hear, but they don't understand.
Okay.
It's harmonizable.
But in
within the
Acts
Greek
22:9, it explicitly says they did not hear the voice.
language. Yeah. But
They did not hear the
that's
voice.
right. Two Greek words are. One says they heard the voice in terms of they heard some sort of sound. That's what was it? Akuntes. Whereas in Acts chapter 22 is ikusan, which means they did not understand. So you can
what about-
hear
what
without
about the-
understanding,
what
a
about
bit
the-
like a different language. You
and
can
what about the
hear
light?
it but not understand.
And what about the light?
And?
Seeing and not seeing.
Okay, so let's
But
compare the seeing.
It
Okay,
says they
okay.
saw no one and they saw
That's
a light.
right.
A light is not a person.
That's right. So they could have seen the light, saw the light,
Okay.
but they did not see any one person.
Okay, so
right?
Acts 26:14.
Oh, so now you're
We
jumping.
we
no,
f-
okay, so
well,
we've resolved, right?
It's
So-
not-
so
it's-
this
it's-
contradiction is
it's not
resolved.
about jumping. It's
No,
it's
okay.
about your explanation.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether I accept it or I don't accept it, it's irrelevant.
Wow.
But that's your explanation, right?
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
within
So
the Greek
in
language,
Acts,
which has a
okay,
very
please explain to me this Greek then, yeah? In Acts 26:14, we fell to the ground.
26:14.
We fell to the ground.
When we had all fallen to the ground, I heard a voice saying to me in Aramaic, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Okay.
Yeah. So did they fall to the ground? Is that falling, or does that mean something else?
Katapesunton. Just just fall down, full prostrate. Yeah,
So they fell on the floor.
yeah, fell on the ground. Yeah,
Okay.
all of them. Yeah.
And Acts 9, Paul's companions stood speechless. So So is that standing or is that falling in
That's
an?
the
Or standing, being still, right? That's another
Metaphorical.
option. Yeah, if something is standing, it doesn't mean it's standing upright,
It could still be
right?
falling at the stand.
Falling but standing.
Not falling, but
Fallen but standing.
remaining not in motion, right?
Okay.
That's what it means.
But
That's
like-
And that's a
if
problem that
something
so
stops,
this is
right?
a problem. This is a
Well,
problem that we
that's
have.
not actually
And the
accurate.
issue-
You can
issue
sit
here
down
is
and
this.
say, I won't stand for this, but you're sitting down. So it still works.
So this is an
That's
issue
the
that we have. That
I hear some voices. I don't know what's going on.
But you can't understand them. That's the issue.
I can't see
let
anything.
Let me just read the
I'm sitting and standing
passage.
and I'm free and I'm one.
Can I get the
No, those two don't correlate at all.
chapter 9? Which verse was it again?
Are you aware of the contradictions in the Bible or
That's no
not?
contradiction.
I am.
Are you aware of them?
And
Okay.
I
Do you
know
think
that-
it's okay to have
I
those?
think
They're okay.
They are reconcilable when you
The
actually
co-
read it in Greek.
The contradictions
You
are
can
rece-
actually you've given me an example, and I think within the scope of the meaning of the original
Yes,
words,
yes.
they are not contradictions. So,
Okay.
so you've not
So when it
given
says
me
God
really
tempted or Satan tempted, you can reconcile that as well,
Yeah.
can you?
that can be reconciled in other ways. So is that in which part are you referring to?
Is it
God tempted.
David? Is it that's tempted? Who's tempted?
Yeah,
David is tempted. Is it?
Israel, yeah.
By God or by the
either
devil?
God tempts him or takes
yeah. That's right. I think
We can look up the verse if you want.
you
but
can you can actually see the same thing actually in the same book, in the book of Job, where you have first, the book of Job. God meets with Satan and says, "Have you seen my servant Job? He is an upright man." And Job says, and Satan says, "Oh, but he is upright because he worships you only because he has so many riches and he has so many blessings." And then God says, "Okay, then take everything that he has is in your hands. Do what you want, right?" And then what Satan is doing is he's destroying everything he has. All his possessions got plundered, and all his children were killed. Now, then Satan meets with God again, and God says, "Well, have you seen my servant Job? He is still remaining faithful, even though you have caused me to be angry at him." So here,
So God was angry with Job.
well, without reason. That's the statement, right?
But God
So-
was angry with Job is what I'm clarifying.
So the point I'm trying to make is that the author clearly knows that the actual proximal cause of the disaster that fell on Job is because of Satan, because Satan did this. But indirectly, because God is supervising all of it, it is also God's responsibility in
So
some
we-
sense.
so-
He allowed it.
I understand.
Right? So
I understand
in
what
that
you're saying.
sense, whatever Satan does, Satan can only do whatever God allows. So if Satan does something in your
understand. I hear what
passage,
you're saying.
it also can be attributed in that God has allowed it to happen, and it's in some sense related to he bears the responsibility.
Okay.
So I think that is also not a contradiction, because
Okay.
it's not about who
when-
directly.
so
There
when
are
the
two
Bible
different
says- I just wanna-
causes,
for me-
right?
From my understanding, so when the Bible says that Satan tempted so and so,
That's proximal,
God
proximal
tempted,
causation.
tempted so and so, this is you can harmonize these together.
Yeah, I think they're
Can
harmonized.
Satan tempt God?
Assalamu alaikum. Your name is Abbas, right? I think I've seen you in the videos, and I think Portugal is somewhere. Somebody's from Portugal.
Yeah, my wife. Yeah,
Yeah, okay. His wife is from Portugal.
my wife is Portuguese.
And she's from Mexico. So
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
I watched I think he's Imran. Okay, yeah. I'll circle around. I think you guys got some.
Nice to meet you.
The idea, because the examples that you've given, what you've said is God is the overarching supervising of actions, and he's using Satan to do his
Allowing Satan, right?
But the problem with that was God was angry with Job. That doesn't fit with this interpretation. Why? And that's why I clarified why. And
Angry in
let me
terms
just-
of actions, right?
Let me clarify. Because ultimately, if it was a test, then there was no anger be required because God would know the outcome. and this is going to be my faithful servant. It's despite whatever circumstances I allow Satan, as you want to put it, to do to him. Yeah. And so there would be no requirement for any visceral emotional reaction.
I don't think this is an emotional reaction,
Ang-
actually.
Anger is a.
This is a rhetorical device.
Anger is one. So this,
Anger
but that's
is
why I
what-
clarified. But
The
point-
word again is
but you-
far richer in meaning, right?
if you want to change the word, no problem.
Well,
but
it
that
doesn't
was
just mean one thing.
that was the word that
Anger
was
means many
given
things.
to me.
That's-
But the question I'm asking
Yeah.
now is something different now. The reason about Satan tempting God,
Yeah.
because now the hierarchy is reversed.
Well, the hierarchy
So
doesn't have
tell
to be
me
reversed.
you explain to me.
Well, before
You
we
explain,
discuss that,
sorry,
you
can
explain
you
to me
define what
how
you mean by temptation?
you explain to me how you can reconcile this idea.
What does temptation mean
that
for
God
you?
can God can
I guess.
tempt.
No, God can be tempted.
That Satan can tempt God. You tell me. How
Satan
in your
stir
same
him
example-
up, provoke,
I think-
right?
exactly, yeah.
I think provoking
How-
is,
God
is
can be
what.
provoked?
Yeah. Well, God, Satan can try to provoke him, right?
Sin
God will, of
provokes
course.
God.
God is infinite in wisdom, infinite in goodness, so He will only do things that ultimately fall within His plan.
How do you
But-
provoke God? Something explain.
By sinning, for example.
By provoking him to anger. That's a phrase. The phrase "provoking me to anger" that God uses. That those people, by their sin, have provoked me to anger hundreds of times, at least 100
and that's
times
that's
in
a
the
problem.
Bible.
That's
Right?
the difference between us.